the state of California coming out of their state Senate and Assembly a bill that is headed to the desk of California Governor Gavin Newsom that would allow student athletes in the state of California through the Fair Pay to Play Act to make money off of their likeness, a business model for major college sports, potentially that the NCAA isn't too happy about, that they would receiving compensation for everything from their likeness to being able to make a little bit of money off of what they went ahead and are doing collegiately on a court or in a pool or on a field. So to talk about all of this is our conscience when it comes to collegiate athletics. We love this man, one of our favorite guests from ESPN, Jay Bilas. How are you, Jay?
I'm doing great, Rich. How are you?
Did I get that right with the Fair Pay to Play Act in the state of California? Best you know?
Yes. It's basically name, image, and likeness rights. So the players off the floor or off the field, as you say, would be able to make money off their name, image, and likeness. Now there has been an amendment to that legislation, which basically says that the players would not be able to monetize things that would be in conflict with school deals. And so my guess there is that if Duke has a deal with Nike, that Zion Williamson couldn't just go out and sign a deal with Under Armour or something and wear a different shoe, even though that happens in the NBA, the Major League Baseball, the NFL, and it's easily remedied. It would be things that would not be in conflict with school deals.
Okay, so let's just say somebody who is particularly famous because of what they do athletically at the collegiate level just wants to have a signing deal where they sign stuff for the day, or they want to make a commercial for something that does not conflict with what the school is already doing. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. And in fact, Rich, I have believed for a long time that this is a civil rights issue. And, players in college don't have the same economic rights as their fellow students. Any student that is a non-athlete is allowed to earn or accept whatever they choose in the marketplace. And in fact, they're celebrated at their college and university for doing so. Give you an example. My daughter just graduated college a couple of years ago. She's a very talented artist. We're very proud of her, but she was majoring in art, and she sold her artwork while she was in school and made good money doing it. That's celebrated and considered to be a good thing. But if an athlete were to sell an autograph or do something out in the commercial space, they'd be ineligible, and frankly, they'd be treated a little bit like a criminal. You've seen Ohio State years ago, guys sold jerseys, and that became a huge issue. So it's things like that would be opened up, and it wouldn't be. The NCAA wants to make it seem like it would create all these complications. It wouldn't create any complications. And one of the laughable things I've heard recently is, well, what if an athlete wanted to do an ad for a casino or for a cannabis company or something like that, and we couldn't have that? Well, what if Nick Saban wanted to do that? Or what if Mike Krzyzewski wanted to do that? The universities can handle those issues just fine. They don't need a blanket rule that says nobody can have anything because we're worried about the sort of the crazy doomsday example.
Well, it's not just the NCAA, too, Jay Bilas. In this New York Times article that I'm reading about it, the athletic director at Long Beach State, Andy Fee, is quoted as saying, "It's like you and I sit down to play Monopoly, and I pull out a different rule book, and every time I pass go, I'm going to give myself $400 instead of $200. And his point there being that if California does this and the rest of the member states of the NCAA and the United States don't allow this to happen in their states, then California has that advantage. And thus, I don't imagine, quote, too many people are going to be willing to allow California schools to compete for NCAA championships because they might get better athletes to come to California because California allows them to make money off their name and likeness." What do you say to that?
Well, I count the Long Beach State athletic director as the NCAA. So the NCAA has always, fallen all over themselves to say that the NCAA is the member school. So that's the NCAA perspective that I'm talking about. And it's sort of more of the same, Rich. I mean, with all due respect to athletic directors around the country and commissioners that use the same party line, To take that ridiculous monopoly analogy, they're not worried about differences in spending in any other area except for athletes. So the Long Beach State athletic director is not worried about passing go and building a $600 million facility at Alabama, or worried about the coaches making $10 million at other schools when Long Beach State can only afford to pay $700,000 to their basketball coach, or whether they have a football program and somebody else doesn't, or whether a university has a hospital and somebody else doesn't. It's all this sort of situational ethics, and they're drawing the line in one place only. There's no spending control in college athletics. There's only one, and that's the athlete. And what they're really saying is the athlete's the most valuable commodity here. And if we're allowed to pay, then the best athletes may go where the money is, and that means, and really what they're doing, you know this, Rich, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but all the best athletes are going to the Power 5 schools anyway. I mean, that's demonstrated, and without argument. So that doesn't mean that Long Beach State can't win once in a while, but I think you can see from the results that you don't see Long Beach State, at the top of the rankings in the money sports. Now, whether they do well in volleyball, great, but that's not what we're arguing about here. And what we're arguing about is there's no reason that a volleyball player at Long Beach State shouldn't be able to capitalize on his or her name, image, and likeness, or swimmers like Missy Franklin. Why shouldn't Missy Franklin when she was at Cal be able to monetize her name, image, and likeness? What would that have to do with any swimming result? It wouldn't. And we need to sort of let go of this antiquated thinking and these really, the truth is, nonsensical excuses we've been making for all this time.
College Game Day, as well as analyst for games, all around college analyst, ESPN's Jay Bilas here on the Rich Eisen Show. So Mark Emmert of the NCAA is saying to the state of California, give us some time for our commission that has been convened for this sort of subject before you send the bill to the governor's desk. The assembly is basically, and the Senate has told the NCAA to pound sand. What do you see as the next few steps here in all this, Jay?
Well, they are getting some time, Rich, because the legislation is not going to go into effect if Governor Newsom signs it until 2023. So the NCAA's got plenty of time. And, I would argue they've had since 1906 to figure this out. And they've shown a tremendous amount of inertia,
right,
and they've not done anything. They don't want to. And so it isn't just the state of California that's doing this. Congress is involved. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut and Representative Mark Walker of North Carolina are both pushing this same thing through Congress. So, there's, it's one thing to have, gas bags like me talking about this over the years, but it's another thing when the government's involved. So the NCAA is being pushed. And right, there've been lawsuits forever, and the NCAA is starting to lose some of these antitrust cases. They've been losing them consistently. They haven't lost every aspect of them, but that part of it, I think, is coming in time. And I thought it was interesting that Mark Emmert's response was to send a letter to the state of California basically saying, if this train continues going down the tracks, the way we're going to respond to it is we're going to tie the players to the tracks, and you're just going to run the players over. Basically saying, you're going to hurt the players, and we're going to punish the players for this. I found that to be a pretty distasteful response, and California basically responded by, I think it was Nancy Skinner basically said, you think you're going to threaten us, you're wrong. And the recent vote was 72-0. So clearly Mark Emmert and his people miscalculated the resolve of the state of California. But also the idea that the NCAA is just going to say, well, that's it, California can't compete anymore. That's laughable. That's not going to happen. It's going to require an adjustment on the part of the NCAA, and they're going to adjust. And this is not this big of a deal. And look, I get it. Like if I could keep all the money, I'd want to keep it as long as possible too. But the writing's on the wall, and this is inevitable that this is going to happen. It's kind of like with the Olympics, where everybody said, "Boy, you let pros in the Olympics, and that's the end of the Olympics, and they're more popular than ever." The Olympics, just having pros in the Olympics, and allowing Olympic athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness has certainly not spelled doomsday for the Olympics, and it won't for college sports either. Just like paying coaches $8, $9, $10 million a year hasn't been the death knell for college sports. Players being able to monetize their name, image, and likeness won't be a problem either.
Well, I guess their concern is, Jay Bilas of ESPN here, their concern is, and Larry Scott of the Pac-12 has said it here, that anything that they were firmly against anything that would lead to a pay-for-play system. Because, again, it does make zero sense to not allow their name and likeness to be monetized. It's their name, it's their likeness. Let's roll. I don't see how the shoe contracts writ large for each school, or whatever soft drink contracts or whatever contracts there are for television, are going to be less money, because the handful, because it's not going to be everybody. I mean, whoever has a market, they should be able to take advantage of it. How does this, however, lead to what they're saying, pay-for-play system? How walk me through that logic, Jay.
Well, what I think what they're concerned about, and where this may lead, is the idea that if you do have players, say we have an open system where players can monetize their name, image, and likeness, the schools are going to find that difficult to deal with. So what they may wind up doing is saying, look, it's so much easier for us to just pay the players and then be able to control what they do, rather than have this system where, we may have a contract with McDonald's and another kid is doing a deal with Burger King, or, they just like with the coaches, the coaches can't go out and endorse whatever products they want to. They have to get approval from the university. And the reason they have that, the university has that approval, is because the coach signs a contract, and they pay for that right to be able to tell them that they can't make money outside their contract. So the easiest thing to do for the schools is just sign players to contracts. And look, I get that. It just strikes me as really odd that Larry Scott and his brethren, Bob Bowlesby says this all the time. And look, they're both great guys, but I just don't agree with this stuff. Bob Bowlesby, the commissioner of the Big 12, says constantly, if we ever pay the players, we will have forever lost our way in college sports. And you're like, why is that the issue? Instead of you don't hear any of these guys saying, look, if we ever start playing 9:00 games on weekdays, we will forever have lost our way. Or if we ever start selling these players for billions of dollars, we will have forever lost our way. If we ever start paying coaches $10 million, we will forever have lost our way. If we're going to lose our way over the players, we lost our way a long time ago. And if these players are old enough to sell, they are old enough to make money. And especially when every other student is allowed to do it. Like, we don't have these rules in place for, the journalism student on scholarship that can go out and write a book, or the music student on scholarship that can go out and cut a record, or, play in a band and make money while they're in school. We celebrate those as like these money-earning entrepreneurs. But an athlete, boy, we got to keep that contagion in, or everything's going to be lost, and dogs and cats are going to be living together, and it'll be chaos. And it's just not true. I mean, it's just not true.
Well, the last one for you on this, I got two more questions for you, Jay Bilas. Last one on this is you don't play one on TV, but you are a lawyer, and you're an expert at the I guess, bureaucracy of the NCAA. You say they're going to have to adjust. And right now, their adjustment, as you've pointed out, is to basically say, California, if you do this, it would be such a disadvantage for the rest of the schools, the member schools in the 49 other states, that you would obviously get more kids and better athletes to come there because of what you're offering them to do with their name and likeness and image. We're just not going to let you play. And as you point out, that is absurd that they won't be able to compete for titles from the state of California. What do you think their adjustment is going to be? Or will they just sue the heck out of California and try and delay it here?
No, California will sue the heck out of the NCAA is what will happen. And that's all the NCAA needs are more lawsuits, because they pay an extraordinary amount in legal fees in order to keep this system intact. And it's almost like the old line from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, when Paul Newman says, if they just give us what it's costing them, for us to stop robbing them, we'd stop robbing them, that kind of thing.
Right.
They're spending so much money on legal fees. You're like, well, why don't you just let the players have the money? It's not that big of a deal. But they're not going to do what they say. They're just threatening that. And with all the money they spend on lobbying in Washington, D.C. and other states and what they're paying in legal fees, it's a total waste of money when we're in this is pro sports. And most people, not everybody, but most reasonable people see this for what it is. They see it as a control thing, that the NCAA wants to control everything and control all the money.
But
I'm not saying I blame them.
No, I understand.
They're just going to lose this.
I understand you're saying that, Jay, but when it all comes down to it, that if 2023 hits and the NCAA has not done a single adjustment for the other 49 states, it really would be a competitive advantage for all the schools in the state of California. I mean, there's no denying that if there's only one state that has, and I understand that there's a federal law out there and there are other states that are going to get in on this maybe, but don't you think that is a competitive disadvantage for everybody else, right, Jay?
Yeah, and all they have to do is pass the same legislation in their own state, and they're just fine. I mean, it's really simple. And what this is going to do is just a catalyst that's going to force the NCAA to do something. And that's basically what this legislation is designed to do. Is that I think California and the truth is the United States Congress. I mean, I've spoken with numerous different senators and representatives who call for information, and I talk about this all the time. Talking about it on your show, I'll talk to anybody about it, so they can ask me whatever they want. But people see this as fundamentally unfair, and they've listened to the NCAA over the years say, "Well, we're looking at it." Well, they're tired of listening to that. They want somebody to do something about it. And I have a ton of respect for this new committee that's been formed on name, image, and likeness to look into it. It's being chaired by Val Ackerman, the commissioner of the Big East. But do I think that anything's going to happen from that is not forced to happen? No, I don't. I think if they looked at it without sort of government involvement in this, then I think their result would have been, boy, it's just too complicated, so we're not going to do anything. But now it's a lot less complicated, and they'll find a solution when the government is pushing the issue. That's an awfully big stick that the government's holding right now.
Well, last thing for you here is here in the state of California, perhaps the most famous school, certainly athletically, and most decorated school in that department, USC, needs a new athletic director. Lynn Swan just retired. I wouldn't say out of the blue. I noticed your tweet about it, Jay, where you pointed out the last three athletic directors have been all, as you said, skilled position players from the football team. What do you make of USC needing a new AD?
Yeah, they've gone quarterback, running back, and wide receiver with Mike Garrett, Pat Hayden, and Lynn Swan. So maybe it's time they gave an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman a chance. Look, this is all coming from Carol Folt, who's the new president at the University of Southern California. She came from the University of North Carolina. She's dealt with difficult issues before, and USC needs an overhaul. So doing the same thing over and over again is not going to net them a different result. And right now, the athletic department is not in the best of shape. So it's important that they win in football and basketball. They've got great resources, and they've got an unbelievable brand. So I think hiring the right person, and it's not a question of someone with business experience or someone who's been in the athletic director realm. It's someone who is the right person for the job. And there are a lot of good candidates out there, but I'm a big admirer of Carol Folt, and I think she'll make a good choice here.
Jay, appreciate the time. Always appreciate chatting with you. One of the highlights of the summer was having you here in person and giving you what you want, which was an Instagram photograph of me and you on the show's Instagram page. Jay, I know that was.
I have already blown it up. It's already blown up, and it is in the entryway as soon as you come in. You can see my bald head and your bald mug right there, and people love it when they come visit.
The famed Bilas foyer. That's what we need. That's what I wanted. So I appreciate you giving me what I want too, Jay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You are the man. Thanks for coming on. That's Jay Bilas, at Jay Bilas on Twitter and at Real Deal Jay Bilas on the gram.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.